And we are live. All right, cool. Let me just check the audio real quick, and we'll be starting here. I'll give everybody a few minutes to join us. We already had 5 people before we even started, so that's amazing. Shout out to Mixed Queen Destiny Phillips 420, Divine Sharika, J.S. Holgerson, Claudia Horace, and JMJ. Shout out to everybody else who's potentially here, but not necessarily typing in the chat. So now that I've said that, I'm going to check my audio. I'll make sure that's good. Oh, wait. Don't need that. Okay. All right, cool. Thank you all for joining me again. We're going to be discussing some of George R. R. Martin's notes, mostly discussing Winds of Winter theories. Got some questions from my patrons that I want to start out with first. But like I said, let's give everybody just a few minutes to come and join us. Sometimes YouTube won't send out notifications until I've actually started being live. So, all right. I was here the whole time. I did not just go outside. I wasn't just smoking a cigarette. Your mama is a liar. Just kidding. What's up, everybody? We got 30 people here already. That's amazing. Thank you for joining me. It is Tuesday, my dudes. You know what? I forgot my cappuccino. I'll be right back. It's not a cappuccino. Keep saying that. It is a brewed coffee with 3 shots of espresso. I drink like 3 a day, and I've slept probably 2 hours a night, but I'm ready for this stream. I swear to God. I'll be right back. All right. Here we go. Shout out to Nailana, Reflective Rambling, Cassie. She did my new logo. It's down there in the left-hand corner right here. Cool, so let's do this. Let's jump into the chat. Cigs are bad for me, but not as bad as your mom's vagina. I'm just kidding, Billy Bob. All right, so starting out with Adrian Burchell. Thank you for joining me. And Amy Pfeiffer. Anime lover Nicole. I love anime as well. Brian Osa DCIW. John Rod. Lauren Walsek. Mixed Queen. Destiny. Fahilips 420. Osiris Gaming. Pebbles83. What's up, girl? And Wex is a secret Chagarian. All right, so the heavy breathing will stop. It will subside, I promise. Just was, running up the stairs. All right, so cool. Let's do this. Drop that. Oh, wait, y'all aren't supposed to see that stuff. Let me close that. We'll do this. Then we'll do that. There we go. All right, cool. It was just my stream stuff. Okay. Let's see. Real quick, just need to check something. All right. Wait, no, this is the wrong thing. This is what I was going to start with. Patreon questions first, because the last stream, I didn't even post about it. I didn't ask my patrons what they would like to ask me. So for that, I thoroughly apologize. Y'all want to hear me rapping? Go to my Twitter, go to my Instagram. I'm dropping songs every day, writing from the POV of a song of Ice and Fire. All right, so let's see. This is, all these questions are from a patron. And if you're unaware, Patreon is a way for me to no longer rely on YouTube's ad revenue, mainly. But also, it's a way for me to be myself. I'm insane. I get excited really easily. A lot of people tell me I'm crass. I'm not the easiest to listen to because of how excited I get. But ultimately, Patreon is where I can 100% be myself and do things that I wouldn't normally be able to do here on YouTube, because YouTube is starting to crack down on not just language, but old streams from several years ago that had been monetized for like years, right? And then initially when I did them, they were demonetized. I requested a review, then they got demonetized again after being monetized for years. And no, those videos aren't getting any views, but that's just a sign of things to come. Pretty soon, they're probably going to do something where, like, I kind of feel like they already did this to my channel, but basically where they put YouTubers who, aren't ad-friendly, regardless of whether you talk about politics or anything like that. If you just curse, or if you're just like me, I guess, you'll probably get labeled to be like someone who will be, promoted at the bottom of the algorithm. So Patreon is me holding up a sword to that wave of darkness coming from YouTube, right? So you can join for just as little as a few dollars, and you'll get prioritized and questions for these streams on YouTube. Also, if you can't do that, thank you for watching here on YouTube. That's the the best thing you can do. It's amazing. So thank you for watching. But like I said, Patreon is just me defending against not only what they're currently doing, but what they're about to do. And eventually, I will probably be forced to mostly upload only on Patreon, and that's probably going to come by the end of this year. Obviously, once I reach a certain amount on Patreon. All right, so the first one is from Billy Bob Robertson. Thank you for submitting this, my dude. Thank you for your support. And this butthole has asked 3 questions, 2 different comments. Just kidding. What if I was just all of a sudden just became extremely mean to all of the people that give me money, right? I just started trashing. I'm not going to do that. I'm just saying, how crazy would that be, right? All right, so what's up, Sir Hunts? What's up, Billy Bub? He says, number 1, do you think the pink letter is as it appears, or do you think it's BS? Right, so this is a good one. This is something that I don't necessarily talk about a lot in my videos, mostly because I feel like I missed the boat with a lot of the Dance with Dragons predictions, right? So I didn't read the books. I pretended to read them while the show was on, but I didn't actually read A Song of Ice and Fire until 2021. I started in fall 2021, and then all the way up until now, I've read them 6 times fully, and I'm working on my 7th reread, right? So when you don't read the books, the pink letter kind of doesn't mean anything to you because they like did it on the show, and it was Ramsay, right? So the way the show did it was that it was Ramsay telling John to come and get it, right? This is it's kind of interesting. It is. How did the show do it? Is it after John's already brought back? I think it is because Sansa's at Castle Black. And I remember at the end of season 6. No, that's not true. At the, like, when John is resurrected, you know, he kind of just like, I'm done. But he still sort of hangs around the Night's Watch, and then Sansa shows up. So the pink letter in the books is not like that. First of all, Sansa's safely tucked away in the veil. And the sister, so to speak, or pretend sister, that's at Winterfell is not even Arya. It's supposed to be Arya, but it's not. It's actually Sansa's friend Jane Poole, right? So if you're wondering who Jane Poole is, because she was not on the TV show, Jane Poole is basically Sansa's best friend who goes through similar things that Sansa does. Like initially they make their way down to King's Landing. Everything's mostly good. Like Sansa loses Lady, but that's the most traumatic thing that happens to her. You know, and obviously Joffrey cursing at her after Nymeria and Arya savage Joffrey, right? So she starts to have a differing opinion of Joffrey, but ultimately she still loves him. So then when they get down to King's Landing, Jane Poole is with Sansa when they kill her father and lock Sansa up in a room for days at a time. Like Jane Poole is with her, and Sansa complains. It's kind of funny. Sansa complains that Jane Poole is annoying because she won't stop crying. Isn't that funny? Like, what? This is your best friend. So anyway, Sansa's like, yeah, she's annoying. So she ends up getting taken away. And then eventually, she gets sent up north. And she's got northern features. She vaguely, loosely looks like Arya. And the Lannisters, Jaime and Cersei's plan is that, well, we're going to pretend that she's Arya. And they don't know which is really stupid because Roose is a bannerman of Winterfell, right? So obviously he's seen Arya and knows what she would look like. But the whole thing is they don't care. This is just someone that they're going to pretend is Arya, even though it's secretly Jane Poole. And she ends up going to Winterfell and marries Ramsay. And then Ramsay obviously tortures her. He does crazy things like have Theon start the foreplay. Like she's obviously... I'm not even going to talk about that because she's like 11 or 12, and that's just weird to even say, like, oh, she was dry, she wasn't ready. No, that's weird. But yeah, that's pretty much what happens. So, flash forward a bit. Jon Snow, Lord Commander at the Wall, Jon gets this letter, right? So in this pink letter, multiple things are said, but ultimately Jon's directly insulted by being called a bastard, and when he finds out that Arya potentially is being kept there, he devises a plan, and then you have the Mance Raider. And I just did a video on Mance Raider. It's been on Patreon for a while, but I just loaded it up to YouTube yesterday. So you can go watch that. I do like 20 minutes about Mance Raider secretly being Rhaegar Targaryen. But ultimately, Jon sends Mance Raider to Winterfell under the guise of the Lord of Bones, under the guise of a bard. So it's like a plan within a plan within a plan. But ultimately, the pink letter is like, if we want to take what the TV show did, which is basically, yeah, Ramsay wrote it, it's possible, right? The things that are mentioned, you could potentially say, well, how would Ramsay know that? Like, how would Ramsay know that, the Lord of Bones, secretly Mance Raider, secretly a bard, just a regular bard who just sings, who just, like, is welcomed into Winterfell because he can play a song, right? Like, how would Ramsay know that? Because in Theon's POV, his last POV that we have where he's still, captive at Winterfell, and then he ends up escaping with Jane Poole, is that Ramsay doesn't necessarily know about, although, that's the thing, as Theon is escaping with Jane Poole, the plan involving Mance and the other spear wives, the wildling spear wives that come with him into Winterfell, they start to die, right? So they get killed in the process of Theon and Jane Poole trying to escape. So it's possible that Ramsay found out about the we found your pretender, like trying to rescue your sister thing, the plot with Mance. It's possible that Ramsay found out about it. But remember, Stannis is like a 3 days march from there. Should have been a 3 days march, but really it's like a 2-week march. And they're sort of just halted up at the snow. But they're not that far from Winterfell because Theon is currently, after he escapes, he's caught and taken to Stannis. So Stannis has both Greyjoys captive right now because he's got Asha captive. When he was making his way to the north, he took her out of Deepwood Mont. I think she was in Deepwood Mont. Either way, she's captive. And then also now Theon is. And like, it's funny because Theon's dropped in front of her and she doesn't even recognize who he is, right? So, because of all the torturing and stuff that's been happening to him. But because of that, and because of the situation, it's easy to question the legitimacy of the pink letter. And ultimately, I'm going to leave it up to the chat. Oh, yeah, speaking of which, the chat should be visible right now. Why is it not? Let me fix that. Let's see. Oh, wait. Let me do this. Oh, wait. Y'all can't see me. Here we go. Okay. YouTube chat. All right. I had figured this out last time. And I just had all the windows pulled up, and then I closed them because I had to shut down the PC. So PC obviously closes the windows after you close the computer out. All right, we'll do this. There we go. Okay, cool. All right, and then we'll go back to this, and I'll do this. All right, awesome. So y'all can see everybody typing in the chat right there. Sorry about that. This is a bit of a delay. But ultimately, that's why the pink letter is kind of, as it. I'm gonna say for answering this question's sake to put a nail on the head here, Billy Bob, my brother from Scotland. I say my brother because I am about 15% Scottish and 36% Northwestern English. Or something like that. It changes all the time. It's crazy. At one point, I was like 10% Irish, but then that dropped down to like 5%, and now it's completely gone. I'm no longer Irish. Ancestry does crazy updating on their stuff. But that's why I say my brother. So I'm still Scottish. I've been consistently Scottish, above 10% Scottish the whole time. My mom is like half Scottish. It's funny. DNA is a funny thing. It's like, obviously, my dad's black, my mom's white, but I got more DNA from my mom. So I'm actually like 7% more white than black. And since my kids, their mom is white as well, she's got red hair and blue eyes, they got more of her DNA, and they got a little bit more of my mom's DNA. But they have my hair. They have my dad's hair. That's funny. But anyway, my Scottish brother, thank you for submitting that question. So, your second question, and I probably won't even get to your third question because I don't know if I have time. Just kidding. Your second question is Three-Eyed Raven. Children, forces of darkness? What? Obviously, if their magic destroyed arm of Dorne created the others who are the enemies of the Lord of Light, surely the creators are also in the same category. Thoughts? So children of the forest and Three-Eyed Raven. Since their magic destroyed the arm of Dorne, and then also created the Night King. That's something only for the TV show. We don't know, it's hinted at, but it's not, Leaf did not take a piece of dragonglass and insert it into a Firstman or potentially a Targaryen and create the Night King, right? That's something the TV show made up. It's hinted at the fact that their magic is similar to the magic that the Children of the Forest and Bloodraven have. Ultimately, there's one consistent thing about magic across the entirety of A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's that if you do a blood sacrifice to go with it, if you kill an innocent person, you probably are like 50% more likely to complete your ritual, your spell, whatever it is you're doing. You have to sacrifice somebody in order to do it. And it may be why the Mayans were so powerful, because they would sacrifice countless peoples, right? And remember, there's Mayan cities in the Amazon jungle that may have potentially, maybe not the Mayans, maybe it's a different group of individuals, similar to the Aztecs and the Mayans. But anyway, there were cities in the Amazon that had 2 million people at one point, till the damn Spaniards came over with their diseases and the Portuguese and wiped it all out. But the reason why those cities got to be 2 million people is because they would sacrifice them all the time. All the time, to ensure that their crops would grow and that they could continue to live their life. You gotta kill somebody in order to make it happen. So, like, obviously that's not true, but George took that and put those principles to the applied physics that is magic. Well, I guess magic would not be like applied physics in George's universe. It would be like theoretical. Would it be like that? Because most of the stuff that they have, the ideas about magic, are theories. So yeah, it would be like a theoretical field of science. I don't know. Okay, so are they the same? Like, if their magic was powerful enough, I'm kind of having to put this question in my head in order for me to understand it. So, Three-Eyed Raven, obviously their magic destroyed the armor of Dorne. Surely the creators are also in the same category. I don't get this. Billy Bob, you're watching right now. What did just help me out? What are you what are you getting at? I'm not even trying to sound like a jerk or anything. I'm sorry. Just curious. Wait, am I invisible? Trying to. Okay, this is silly. Yeah, let me see. If Billy Bob, if you're watching this in the chat, please type in the chat right now. Let me clarify for me. I'm pulling up the chat on my phone, so it's more accurate. I've got a buddy. This is. Okay, here we go, from Billy Bob. Sorry, Wex is a secret Tark said, I've got a buddy who actually believes that Wex wrote the pink letter. What? Why would Wex do that? Wex the Squire of Theon? The mute? Why would he do that? He would be on, if anything, he'd be on Jon's side because he'd see what happened in the end to Theon, right? Like, don't trust the Boltons. And ultimately, he is on Jon's side because he's with the Manderleys. He sided with them and Davos and Stannis. They're all on kind of the same team Living. I meant if their magic did both, are they evil? Okay, so why didn't you just write that? Why did you have to go a way that confuses me? Just kidding. So if their magic is the same, are they both evil? Well, no. All right, so this would be like, hey, let's do some Lord of the Rings talk, right? So the Ring of Power, regardless of your intentions, turns you evil. Now, from what I've read, like, I don't necessarily agree with that idea. It's kind of outdated. Like, nothing is just plain black or white. There's some in between. And to be fair, I have not read enough of Tolkien's Legendarium to have a full opinion on it. But that idea is what's instilled into the reader from book one. No matter who wields the Ring of Power in their intention, it will always corrupt them and make them evil. George's world is way more nuanced than that, right? So, like, and so is Tolkien. I don't know yet. I haven't finished it, But in George's world, something is never just straight up evil. Like, the Children of the Forest using this great water magic, their intentions were to stop the First Men from coming over, right, and invading their land and stealing from them, killing them, destroying what they think is sacred. So from their perspective, they're good. But from the First Men's perspective, they're fleeing. Potentially, we don't know why the First Men started coming over to Essos, but we can assume they were probably fleeing something, like the Valyrians, right? The Valyrian freehold wasn't necessarily a thing yet, but they could have been fleeing the first set of Dragon Lords, or just the onslaught of the Long Night that was happening in Essos. So the First Men started coming over, and from their perspective, they just want to live. They want to escape their previous, location that was no longer a place to live, and they want to sort of settle a new land that ultimately, since, they're called the First Men, you assume there's no other men over there, even though there is, right? So Old Town is way older than all that. So depending on perspective, the same magic that was used to destroy the Hammer of the Water. Wait, was it called the Hammer of the... That was what it was called when they destroyed the Arm of Dorn. It was the Hammer of the Waters, right? So you could say that that's evil, but depending on your perspective, it may have been good, right? So hopefully that gives you an answer. Thank you for submitting that one, Billy Bob. And the next one is from Pebbles83, another member of my Patreon here on Patreon. And this is from... well, it's from Pebbles83. I just said that. She says, "Hey, Sir Hunts." Excuse me. Damn. Sorry about that. My coffee is now cold. Do you think... Okay, so wait. So Corlys Velaryon is one of my overall favorite characters in the Song of Ice and Fire. I would love to take a deeper dive into the Velaryons and the small part they currently play in the Game of Thrones book series. I know Rainwater sits the Velaryon seat in Game of Thrones and supported Stannis in the War for the Five Kings, then gets in a love affair with Cersei for a bit. My 3 questions are, the first one, do you think he tried to use Cersei for his own advantage since he reminded her of Rhaegar? For sure. Easily. Cersei at this point, she doesn't have Jaime. She doesn't have Tywin. Joffrey's dead. And all she has is... Wait. What did I just say? She doesn't have... I might have said Tywin, but I meant to say Tywin. She doesn't have her father, either of her brothers. Joffrey, the only person she really has is Tommen, who's a little boy, and the Tyrells, who hate her, right? She's got a few close companions, but ultimately she doesn't trust them enough to allow them fully into her fold. Like, she didn't even never really let Jaime into know her true thoughts and feelings. Like, she just sort of played him, right? So she kind of does that with everybody. So she's in a very vulnerable position, and she's not like the Bene Gesserit. And that's a Dune reference. The Bene Gesserit are trained to hide their facial expressions and also read the energy of others by how they interact in facial cues and all these things that they do with their body language, right? So Cersei is the complete opposite of that. If Cersei's mad, she'll tell you. You'll see it written all over her face. So when she's vulnerable, when she looks specifically at Rain Waters and she's like, "Oh my, he looks kind of like Rhaegar. Like a strapping young lad. I would like to feel him inside me," right? She lets that be known very plainly. So Rain Waters is like, let me seize the moment, right? Carpe diem. So to answer your first question, yes. For sure, he uses his Valyrian features to help persuade Cersei to make him her master of ships, which is ultimately what she does. So he's got this royal fleet of ships that she's having being built, and he's now holed up in the Stepstones, and he's taxing all of the vessels that come through, and he's now known that he's going by... We assume that it's a rain down in the Stepstones, because much like with everything in George's books, nothing is for certain until you either have a POV from someone who's a part of that encampment, or you have another existing POV come past the Stepstones. Supposedly, there's rumors of a pirate king who calls himself the Lord of the Tides down in the Stepstones, and he's got these massive ships that are brand new that he's holding up with at the Stepstones. So it's hinted, very heavily hinted at the fact that he's basically doing what Corlys had to stop in House of the Dragon, right? So the Crab Feeder was doing what Rain Waters, who's a bastard of House Velaryon, he's now doing that with the Royal Fleet down in the Stepstones, which is the channel of islands that's sort of left over, similar to what the Arm of Dorn used to be. Like, you have to pass through these Stepstone Islands in order to get into Westeros and sail up to go to the trading ports in Old Town and King's Landing and Dragonstone and all these different locations, right? It's prime real estate when you hold up there. So your second question is, are you disappointed with what happened to that once great house and where it stands in GOT? So anytime you get disappointed that a character died before we could see them interact with another character, or there was a very interesting time period in Daenerys' history when she was younger and she lived in the House of the Red Door and she remembered lemons, right? That very much sounds like it's not And Dorne could have potentially been in Braavos, because Braavos has these lemon trees, right? Or I don't know that theory all that well, but basically what I'm getting at here is anytime you may feel sympathy for a character or that feeling of loss for what could have been, another character comes in and sort of takes that place. So House Velaryon in the Game of Thrones books is literally just a vassal to Stannis, right? So they are present when Stannis is burning people, and you hear him talking shit about Stannis, having Melisandre control everything he does, right? So they're not nowhere near as important as they are in the world books. So we find out in A World of Ice and Fire that House Velaryon were actually in Westeros before House Targaryen, and they were actually getting rich as hell off of the trade that would flow from Westeros to Essos. They were over there before Aegon the Conqueror conquered Westeros and united. Now, the Valyrians used Dragonstone as an outpost for centuries before they eventually conquered Westeros in the form of the Targaryens via the dude Aegon the Conqueror. So ultimately, they had centuries of getting rich, and that's how they were extremely rich. It's kind of weird the way that they went in House of the Dragon by having Corlys talk about how he's had to make his own fortune. That's nonsense. House Velaryon was one of the wealthiest houses in the land at that time. Corlys did make his own fortune. He doubled their wealth. He made them the most powerful, right? Or the richest at that time. But ultimately, they were pretty well off before Corlys did what he did, right? They, like I just mentioned, for centuries would fill their coffers, which means they significantly benefited from the trade that would flow from east to west, from people that would come over to Westeros having these amazing bolts of silk and all the rare shit in Westeros, and then the same, like the stuff that's not so rare in Westeros that they would trade over to Essos. The Velaryons controlled that trade for centuries. They've got rich as hell off that, right? Then you also find out Daemon, right? Prince Daemon in House of the Dragon is named after Daemon Velaryon, who's the first ever Kingsguard, right? Aegon the Conqueror is half Velaryon himself, if I'm not mistaken. Also, he put a member of House Velaryon on a small council. So the history is not necessarily there in the main series, but it's mentioned after the fact. And because of that, I'm not necessarily disappointed with what happened to a once great house, because they're not a great house in the main storyline. They're just like a vassal of Dragonstone. In Dragonstone is no longer the power it once used to be, because technically, right, whoever's named the Prince of Dragonstone is next in line for the Iron Throne. Obviously, Stannis was camping out at Dragonstone. He was not next in line for the Iron Throne. So the power that Dragonstone once had when the Targaryens were in their height, not the same in the main series. The plot line is very interesting, but I don't feel love lost for that, to answer your question. And then the third one from Pebbles83, thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for submitting these. Is, do you think we will get more about their story in Winds or in A Dream of Spring? And I've kind of been hinting at that. Yes, for sure. George is setting up a comeback for their house. Ultimately, with Daenerys, if Daenerys does make it to Westeros, if she's sitting on the Iron Throne, or if, say, Fagon is sitting on the Iron Throne with one of her dragons and Daenerys is dead, everything kind of seems cyclical. So it makes sense if you end this story after kind of starting it with an Aegon the Conqueror, small council, similar, right? Velaryon and Celtigar and all these other people. You end the story on a similar note. Aegon, with a King Aegon, a member of House Velaryon. But that's the thing, though. It's kind of like Aurane Waters is like the main dude right now. So potentially, unless George wants to introduce a few more characters or give him a POV, which that would be cool. It's kind of hard to tell. There's so many different plot points. Obviously, we could say that, what's going to happen is when Daenerys and Victarion finally do make their way with the Iron Fleet through the Stepstones, they're going to ravage Aurane Waters, and Aurane will probably try to join Daenerys' side, and maybe he'll take Lady Cersei or something with a part of Daenerys' Iron Fleet via Victarion, and they sack King's Landing. That'd be nuts. But what if by the time that happens, Cersei's not even in King's Landing, and it's Aegon sitting on the Iron Throne? So you kind of have a Dance of Dragons 2.0. So Aegon is in the city while Daenerys is sacking it with the Iron Fleet. He escapes, somehow finds a way to tame one of her dragons, and then he eventually builds his army. Daenerys is already building her army, and the two of them are ultimately about to face off, but then they come into an agreement to marry each other, but then one of them's poisoned, and then the other one's killed, and you have a similar ending to what happened on the show, whereas a Stark is the true king, ruling from up north, and there's no longer a king down south in King's Landing. Maybe, potentially, I don't know. But thank you for submitting those. And then we got another one from AnaaaRodarte, and this was no questions. They just said anything Fire and Blood related would be sick, or even Dunk and Egg would be cool. So, wait, I actually asked if there was a specific question. I'm not saying that, but y'all can see that. That's funny. What? man, me and my man. That's your mom's house video of the homeless crackhead dude telling myself, me and my man. Okay. So what was in the letter Aegon the Conqueror got that only he read? What do you think was said to him? He read it in cold face, no reaction. So the last part you're saying, like, he received the information in a stern face, kind of. Like, George loves repeating those lines. It's like in Dune, right? Another Dune reference. Frank Herbert loves to signify, go back to the same catchphrase, like he tried to swallow in a dry throat. So initially in the first Dune book, Paul Atreides happened to him several times on Dune, the planet Arrakis, because it's a desert planet, right? It at one point was tropical, but it was terraformed into this massive Sahara planet via the sandworms. So Frank will often call back that line through all of his books. Will say this character tried to swallow during a dry throat. So that's what George does when a lot of the times in his books when he talks about a certain character receiving a traumatic bit of information, they receive the information solemn face, like Tywin, Roose Bolton, Aegon the Conqueror, not Jaime Lannister, I was about to say Jaime Lannister, Ned Stark. Those are the characters that are so stoic, they receive information and their face remains impartial. You don't know, you can't really tell. As a juxtaposition with Lord of the Rings, when a certain character is told information, a shadow passes over their face. So that happens several times. Like when Frodo's tempting Bilbo with the ring, a shadow passes over his face and he goes evil, right? Not quite as evil as in the movies with the sharpened teeth and all that stuff, but it's a very similar reaction just for a brief second that Frodo sees in Bilbo's face. And Tolkien says a shadow passes over their face. So when you said that reminded me of that. So what was in there? I actually kind of did answer this recently. I don't know if you submitted this question, but I think this was submitted by another patron of mine. This letter, right? So basically, Aegon wars with Dorne for years, and eventually what ends up happening is a letter is sent to him via a princess after the Yellow Toad of Dorne dies, right? So Rhaenys is killed in 10 AC in Dorne, in Hellholt. And then after she's killed, obviously, Visenya and Aegon reign hell on Dorne for like the next 10 years. They burn every castle to the ground, but they still ultimately can't get Dorne to submit. So, the ruling Prince Martell, after his mother dies, who was the main matriarch during the first initial wars that Aegon tried to take over Dorne and get them to come into the fold and be part of the Seven Kingdoms, the Yellow Toad of Dorne is this old fat woman who eventually dies. And when she dies, her son becomes prince, and then that prince sends his daughter to King's Landing to go and talk to Aegon, and she's got a letter with her. And as soon as she gets there, Aegon's companions are like, yo, kill this, put her in the brothel. Why does she think it's okay to come up here when they killed Rhaenys? They put a bolt through Rhaenys and Meraxes' eyes. Fuck this little Dornish hoe, right? Put her in the grave. But Aegon reads the letter with a stony face and doesn't say anything to anybody, gets on Balerion, and flies over to Dragonstone. Spends the night over there, then ultimately goes back to King's Landing, and the war for Dorne is given up. Aegon allows her to go back, and they stop burning Dorne. Now, you gotta realize, it's mentioned that most people hate the smell of Dragonstone. Dragonstone smells sulfuric. Dragonstone is just not necessarily a awesome place to live. It's got a volcano that's active, and it always smells like soot and smoke, and that's because it's the hatchery for the dragon eggs for the Targaryens, right? And also the fact that there's an active volcano on it called the Dragon Mount. So, Aegon, it's noted that Aegon loves that smell. He was born there. He loves everything about it. So, the mystery that George puts in and makes our brains light up and focus in on that, oh, he flew to Dragonstone. Why would he fly to Dragon? Is there some magical thing if Dragonstone he went to go consult? Potentially. There could potentially been a glass candle at Dragonstone, and he went to go look through the glass candle to verify the contents of that letter, and the contents of that letter said that Rhaenys is still alive and has been tortured and raped all these years, and if you end your war on Dorne, I will kill her, and finally put her to rest, and give you her bones and Meraxes' skull and all this stuff, right? That could have potentially been the contents of that letter, and then Aegon could have flown to Dragonstone, looked into the glass candle, and verified, holy Rhaenys is still alive at this location, and I didn't know where she was before, but now they told me where she was, and now I can see it through the glass candle. Let me end this war and end her life, and finally lay her to rest, because you got to realize Rhaenys is Aegon's one true love. The only reason why he married Visenya is out of respect. He should have technically only married Visenya because she's the older one. He was supposed to marry her to continue their bloodline, but he married Rhaenys out of love and married Visenya out of respect. So he never really fucked with Visenya like that. Like, it's mentioned that for every one night that he would spend with Visenya, he would spend 10 nights with Rhaenys, right? So what was in that letter? If you want to be fun and do the tinfoil, well, then it was exactly what I just said, and it's exactly what I just said did. Like, Aegon went to Dragonstone, right? Checked the glass candle, confirmed what the contents of the letter was, and then agreed, let me end this war on Dorne. Let me put Rhaenys to rest. Maybe he flew to Dorne to go and actually verify. Maybe he flew instead of, they just say Dragonstone, but that could easily be changed. Maybe they just assumed Dragonstone because he was back the next day, but in all actuality, he flew to Dorne, right? Potentially laid Rhaenys' body's bones interred at Dragonstone, and then the next morning he was seen leaving Dragonstone, heading back to King's Landing, which was basically just Aegon's Hill at this point. It was kind of making its way up. Maegor's the one who built the Red Keep. Maegor's Holdfast, the Red Keep inside the Red Keep. The Red Keep was kind of just being built at this time. But anyway, it's possible that Aegon did all that, right? And that's the fun tinfoily way to do it. But ultimately, like I said, it's probably just he went there to clear his head. Oh, okay. To the theory. He went down to Dorne, got Rhaenys, laid her ashes, interred her ashes at Dragonstone, and then flew from Dragonstone and was seen flying from Dragonstone that next morning. And that's where everybody was like, oh, he just went to Dragonstone overnight. But really, he could have went down to Dorne, picked up Rhaenys, went to Dragonstone, buried her, then flew back, and then, it was all good, right? But ultimately, that's probably what happened. That's probably exactly what happened. But the other option is that he just went to Dragonstone to clear his head and realized that many, many more people were going to die. Potentially, Aenys, his son, could die. He could lose Visenya, his other wife, right? So he just decided to end the war. So thank you for submitting that question. Hopefully that answered it. AnaaaRodarte. And this next one is from Claudia V. Haras. And she says, I'm rewatching Game of Thrones. Awesome. Lysa and Peter had Jon Arryn murdered. Did Lysa and Peter know that Jon Arryn was investigating Robert's bastard situation? So this is a TV show, and to be completely honest, I haven't watched the TV show in years. And my vast well of knowledge that I once had about the TV show has now been replaced by a vast well of factual knowledge from book lore. So let me try to figure this out. Lysa and Peter had Jon Arryn murdered. Yes. Did Lysa and Peter know that Jon Arryn was investigating Robert's bastard situation? So in the books, it's kind of manipulated. You assume that Littlefinger and Lysa worked together to have Jon Arryn murdered because Lysa says this to Peter when she's distraught and discovers that he was kissing Sansa, or Sansa was kissing him. So she says this. She says, like, I murdered my husband for you or whatever. So I don't know if they went that way in the TV show, potentially. Thank you for submitting that question. I hope you enjoy your rewatch of Game of Thrones. And also, I know you've requested some anime stuff. I've actually got a reaction recorded of Dorohedoro. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's on Netflix. It's basically about... it's a really cool anime. It's about this dude whose head gets replaced with a caiman, and it's like sort of like multi-dimensional reality kind of thing where witches are like they people who do magic are in charge of the world, and they hunt humans. And the human, like regular human people, their population has been dwindled down to nearly nothing, and they stay in like this third world infested city. And the wizards and witches and magical beings will come through and just like perform experiments on them. Like that's what happened to Dorohedoro, the main character. His head was replaced with a gator head, and now he like it's like it'll get cut off and then it'll grow back, and like eventually I read ahead in the manga, and eventually you find out that he actually did this experiment to himself, and he lost all of his memories in the process of doing that. He was part of a gang called the Cross-Eye Gang, which, believe it or not, they didn't look like this. Cross-eyed, they just have crosses over their eyes. I don't know, it's pretty cool. It's one of my favorite animes. It sort of just came out of nowhere. We've been waiting like 3 years for season 2, but I have that recorded, Claudia, and I'm going to put that on Patreon in a couple of weeks. I just want to make sure, that it doesn't cause my Patreon to get taken down. So the next question is from the first person that left, whose questions I started answering, Billy Bob Robertson. Thank you for submitting this. My duty says, oh, here's another fun one. Were you in Arya's position? Which 3 names would you have given? His are Tywin, Gregor, and Cersei. So that's House of Black and White, Jack and Hagar, offers to kill 3 people for Arya. And the reason being is because when Arya is escaping this location, so I don't remember how exactly happened on the TV show, but Arya is besides the God's Eye, and she's with Yaren and Hot Pie and Gendry and all of the surviving members that left with her to go to the Night's Watch. Remember when Yaren saved her life and wouldn't let her watch Ned be beheaded, right? He grabbed her, sort of cut her hair, forced her. She was crying, right? He made her pretend to be a boy. Ultimately, he ends up leaving King's Landing with a group of individuals. Those individuals are all headed to the Night's Watch, and they make it, like they're trying to obviously make it north, but they make it near River Run and the fords, and, there's the Blue Fork, the Red Fork, the Twins, and all that stuff where the Freys are, right? So they're around that area, and there's this, tower, right? It's called the Lord's Tower. It's basically the person who's in charge of that town, that everybody pay their taxes to and stuff. There's this little town that Arya and the Night's Watch, and they all hold up in. So when they do that, Sir Amory Lorch comes a knocking, right? And he's like, let us in. Basically, they're after Gendry. They had previously ran into them in the woods, and Euron held a knife, and he's like, get the fuck out of here. Y'all better come back with some people. So that's what they did. They come back, and it's not the exact same members, but they still know that this tower is supposed to be empty. So anyway, they lay siege to it. Arya is killing people. She's saying for Winterfell. It would have been a really amazing scene to see on the TV show. Hot Pie's yelling, Hot Pie. They're killing individuals that are coming in. Eventually what happens is they get overwhelmed, right? The people start coming over the battlements. Yoren's killed. They are forced to escape. And the way they escape is through this underground tunnel that's near this area that's burning down. It's like a barn. The tunnel's inside the barn. So Arya has Hot Pie and Gendry all go in the barn, and then she, off to the right, there's Jack and Hagar, Rorsch, and Biter. So Arya stops and saves them, right? She basically breaks the axe or gives it to them, and they save themselves. So eventually she runs back into Jack and Hagar when she's pretending to be this character known as Weasel at Harrenhal. She's a captive of Ty. That's what they did on the TV show. They made it Tywin Lannister, but it's actually Roose. And during this time frame, she pretty much is told by Jaqen, look, three names were supposed to be given to the death, right? But you saved us. So now 3 more people have to die in order that the many-faced god of death still gets his due, right? Because death comes for everyone in the end. So she's told, name 3 people, 3 names a girl must say, right? And then it's funny because Arya eventually at one point names Jaqen, and he's like, please remove the name. And he pulls his blade out and he's about to kill himself because Arya's like, Jaqen Hagar. And he's like, no, you must unsay the name. Please don't say the name. It's really funny. But anyway, who would I pick? Okay, so not Tywin, Gregor, or Cersei. Who would I pick? All right, who would I pick if I were Arya? Well, do I have to be Arya, or could I just pick? Yes, I would, because you say if I were in Arya's position. 3 names. A man pretending to be a girl must name. That's a good one. Ramsay Bolton. But here's the thing. If I'm in Arya's position, I don't have none of my knowledge about what's going on. I would have to only know what Arya knows. I mean, Arya regrets not naming Roose or Tywin. Damn, I don't know. I would have named Joffrey. I would have said Joffrey. Like, Arya knows that Joffrey's the main cause for a lot of this. I would have said Joffrey for sure. Cersei. I know you already said that, but it's hard not to say Cersei. And then Tywin. Like, those would be mine. Joffrey, Cersei, and Tywin. Thank you for submitting that, my dude. Oh, that's me. I said, sorry, mate. Scots are only allowed 1 question per stream. All right, so let's jump into the Reddit stuff. All right, so is this the first one? Yes. This is a post that I seen on Reddit. Basically, it was just interesting to me. I had never seen it before. I was doing research for the stream, for looking through George's notes to do Winds of Winter predictions, but I kind of went through most of the most interesting stuff that was available on Reddit last week. So I would just kind of be rehashing that stuff. So that's why I kind of just went through and just decided to pick, a few different posts from Reddit. There's this one and then there's another one. Let's see. We've been streaming for about 51 minutes right now. Just give me 1 second. I need to check a couple of things. I'm still here. I haven't left yet. I just need to make sure my notes are in order. I got to continue to check everything. It's kind of hard out here for a pimp. All right, so let's see. So this was just interesting, and I want you all watching this. Let me know if you agree with some of the points. I'm going to give my thoughts, obviously, as I'm reading it. So this person says, so as we're all aware, Game of Thrones developed a lot of problems. Okay, so the title of this is Hot D has retained some of the bad habits Game of Thrones had in its later years, namely prioritizing spectacle over logic. So before I even read this, you could tell that the subject matter in this post was probably going to be something to do with Rhaenys coming through the floor in episode 9, because that was very much spectacle over not necessarily logic, over book canon. They went for, like, I think the writer said something like, I want a dragon to bust up through the floor or something. Like, not Ryan Condal, but the writer of that episode says something crazy like, what would happen if a dragon popped up or something like that. So that's how that scene ended up happening. But that piqued my interest because I thought, maybe this person will make some good points. So here we go. Let's read it, right? So they said, so as we're all aware, Game of Thrones developed a lot of problems after book material ran out. One of the worst was a prioritization of generic fantasy spectacle over logical actions and decisions that made sense within the world. This reached its peak with Cersei nuking King's Landing and inexplicably being named queen immediately afterwards. And it just continued at this level for the next 2 seasons, to the point that even mainstream reviewers started getting irritated with it late season 7. Okay, so I could actually respond to that part right there. I was a mainstream reviewer. When I would review season 7, season 8, part of season, well, not really season 6, season 7, season 8, some of my videos, some of my live streams would get hundreds of thousands of views, and I can confidently tell you that I had no issues with Game of Thrones season 7. So I don't know what mainstream reviewers mean, what you mean by that, but maybe you mean people who don't necessarily just only review Game of Thrones. Because I only reviewed Game of Thrones. I did Walking Dead and Marvel and Star Wars and all that stuff, but mostly just Game of Thrones. I can confidently tell you that I had no problems with season 7. My problems didn't arise until I got the leak, right, like a lot of people, that Daenerys was going to be killed in the throne room by Jon Snow. After they seemingly embraced, after snow was apparently falling on the ground. That turned out to be ashes. I thought this means the Night King had came to had came to King's Landing, and it just turned Daenerys. I came up with some crazy theories to rationalize the fact that they were killing my favorite character by my other favorite character in the last episode, right? So, That's when I had problems. And that season 7 was already off. They had already started filming season 8. So there's people that say this show fell off in season 6 and season 5 of this and season... No, I don't agree with that. I'm not going to change my opinion now that I've read A Song of Ice and Fire and try to go back and be like, oh, well, now the show's not as good. No, because initially, and I still feel that way, when it was coming out, it was perfect. Obviously, there was things I would have changed in season 8, but seasons 1 through 7, flawless. Seasons 1 through 6, even better. They did a pretty good job. That's not even bullshit. They did a pretty good job. What happens is hate becomes more vitriolic as the years pass because no one takes a step back and be like, okay, well, look, what do we expect from the final season? The show was over. Regardless, even if it hit all these points and made 90% of the audience happy, the show was going off. There was no more. There's no more of the best show of all time. It's going to suck. It's going to make people like myself included offended at the end, no matter how it ends, because it's the end. It's over, right? So anyway, okay, so they're going, now we're at House of the Dragon, and the quality is obviously much, much better than late Game of Thrones. By the way, this is from a username WhiteWin617 on Reddit, and this post has 3,300 upvotes. And the quality is obviously much, much better than late Game of Thrones, but it's becoming obvious. It's inherited a lot of the same bad habits. A lot of them? You just said the quality is obviously much, much better. Then you contradicted by saying, but it's becoming obvious it inherited a lot of the same bad habits. Okay, so namely a spectacle over logic problem, and it's been there since the beginning. This is the part, right? So let's go over the worst offenders. Episode 1, the tourney scene. I'm about to smash these points. Anyway, episode 1, the tourney scene. It featured really difficult to explain carnage during the melee, where presumably high-born lords were participating in front of the king. Daemon also blatantly cheats during the joust, and nobody comments on it, or at least does something that even casual viewers unfamiliar with jousting would wonder is cheating. Okay, so let me explain something to you. Game of Thrones is the rules that you're basing off of this time period in Westeros. When I say Game of Thrones, I mean the TV show. So if a Baratheon and a Lannister were at a party and a Stark came up to them and said something, it would be the end for that Stark. During this time period, they are all equally shit, as in none of them matters, except for the Targaryens. Let me introduce you to this dude named Aerion Brightflame. He beats the shit out of a puppeteer woman just for showing a dragon collapse to the ground. Like, showing a dragon being defeated in a puppet show. Let me... Joffrey, I don't know if you've seen what he did in front of the entire court to Sansa, but there was no repercussions for that. Books and TV show. Don't pick and choose certain things. Let's break that tourney scene down. Okay, it featured really difficult to explain carnage during the melee. That actually was something that I thought of, and until I heard about it, didn't come up with an answer for it. All right, so this is not like to just add logic to something after the fact, but you got to understand that the northern people, House Stark and the First Men, were never much for tourneys. They're like Aemon in that sense. They don't do tourneys. They didn't have joust. They didn't have time for that. Instead, they would have melees that would last for days. The northern men, House Stark, House Bolton, the Umbers, the Flints, the Boltons, the Norries, all of these people would have savage duels that would last for days. They would have bloody melees. It'd be similar to what King Maegor couldn't pick a hand of the king or couldn't pick a Lord of Harrenhal, so he got tired of his people asking about it, so he said, yo, go fight for Harrenhal. Whoever wins out of this massive melee will be the new Lord of Harrenhal. Guess what? The dude that wins lives only 2 days after that and never fully claims Harrenhal, right? So this is the kind of world that this show is taking place in. Those events happen all the time. House Stark ain't shit right now. They're just some people up north. So if you're talking about the House Stark dude that got hit in the face with the mace and there was no repercussions to that, let me just remind you, the northern men would battle for days. They didn't have tourneys. They would just have these melees to fight over, like, honors, and it was their version of a tourney. They would have these massive... This is what the northern people do. All right, so then you said Daemon blatantly cheats. We already addressed that. That's nonsense. The Targaryens can do whatever the fuck they want. He tilted his thing down and made it stop. That's bullshit. The Targaryens can do whatever they want. So White wins 617. That first point means you need to go back and reread it. Specifically, World of Ice and Fire, the culture of the Northern Mains, and the society of what Westeros is, right? So then your second point, episode 3. Daemon, after receiving word that Viserys wants to help in his war in the Stepstones, dons his plot armor and runs in the middle of the battlefield pretending to surrender, then miraculously isn't killed by hundreds of archers and kills the crab feeder in single combat. Edit, I'll concede that this one isn't as bad as the rest on the list. Here's the thing, though. Once again, this is a TV show. Daemon didn't die in the Stepstones. They went for spectacle because literally Daemon just kills Kragg's crab feeder in a duel, and that's that. He's named King of the Stepstones. A couple years later, someone else is named King of the Stepstones, and those problems resume. Having Daemon, you misunderstand plot armor. Plot armor, let me give you an example. Plot armor is when Arya got stabbed in the stomach and pushed into the dirty-ass river in Braavos and then somehow survived. That's plot armor. That's plot armor. Daemon wasn't supposed to survive during this battle. Daemon wasn't supposed to die during his conquering of the Stepstones. So they added some flair onto it. But runs into the middle of the battlefield, pretending to surrender. Okay, so actually he walked to a hill. I don't know if it was the middle of the battlefield, but he walks to a hill, right? One of the crab feeders' men comes out, and one of the dudes in the triarchy comes out, and Daemon's kneeling with Dark Sister in front of him. So he didn't run into the middle of a battlefield. He walked casually, waving a white banner. They all thought he was handing up, and then miraculously isn't killed by the hundreds of archers and kills the crab feeder in single combat. Well, he's supposed to kill the crab feeder in combat, because that's literally what happens in the books. I don't know if you've ever shot a bow and an arrow before, but it's not easy, especially if you're at a beachfront in the wind. First of all, have you ever been to the beach? You ever been to the beach at all? The wind is nuts. It's crazy. You can fly kites there because of how crazy the wind is, right? Mind you, they're using longbows that are single-stringed and probably or maybe at the most part, at their most accurate up to 50 to 100 yards or whatever. So they're obviously way further away than that. They're up on a hill. They're firing against the wind and down. Of course, none of those arrows were going to hit their target. Read actual battles about history, for instance, in Power and Thrones, this medieval book that I'm making, or this book that's about medieval history from the early dynastic Egypt all the way through the Crusades and up to Normans conquering England, right? Most of those battles mention about how arrows littered the ground. Some of them would hit their targets, but it's pretty fucking hard to be accurate with a bow. Do some more research, again, for your next point, right? That'll be my point to yours. Just do a bit more research. Don't try to be one-sided. Okay, and then the next one, episode 5. And obviously this is all my opinion, right? Episode 5, this is where I really started getting worried. Kristen Kroll, now I actually said something about this, because he's a Kingsguardman, yes, but he beats the crap out of Joffrey Lonmouth, and no one even says anything about it. I'll agree with the logic there, right? They said, this is where I literally started getting worried. Kristen Cole brutally murders Laenor's lover in cold blood during a party, and it's never once commented on. Absolutely no mention of him giving any kind of excuse why he would do such a thing. No mention of why he isn't stripped of his cloak. No mention of how Laenor felt being around Cole for years, knowing that he did this completely on purpose. It was a change from the story for spectacle purposes, and it made really no sense at all, nor did it try to. Okay, so, yeah, I can't really defend that. I'm not even going to try to defend that because some of my thoughts were similar to that. Like, Kristen Cole is a member of the Kingsguard. Joffrey Lonmouth is just a dude. He's a companion of potentially the king consort, right? So obviously Rhaenyra is going to wear the crown. Laenor will be her king consort. So you murdered the king's companion in cold blood. There's no excuse for that. They really should have just locked him up. They should have had They should have had a couple of other Kingsguardmen come over and stop him, and then ultimately put him in handcuffs and like had him. At least the idea was proposed to go see the king, and then Alicent could intervene and save him. Right? Like, I don't know. I kind of, yeah. Episode 5 was that choice, right? Like, so it didn't necessarily break canon because Criston Cole does pretty much savagely beat Joffrey Lonmouth at attorney, and Joffrey Lonmouth dies a few days later of the sustained injuries that he got from Cole, right? They did it at the wedding. There was no mention of any repercussions for Criston Cole doing it at the tourney, because that's like what happens at tourneys, right? Accidents, people die, all right? So yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting choice. I think it was like kind of not necessarily as much of a spectacle as Rhaenys coming through the floor, but along those lines kind of thing. Like, maybe they didn't want to have another tourney, and they're like, we need to have this happen. Let's have it happen here. And the way that it looked afterwards, when they zoomed out on Joffrey's face, and like he had all this bone sticking out, and he's barely recognizable. That kind of is a spectacle. So you made some decent points to the episode 5 thing. So let's go on to episode 8. Daemon executes Vaemon Velaryon by cutting his head in half in the middle of everyone in the throne room. Again, Targaryens, my dude, can at all times, always, when they're in power, do whatever the hell they want. Quit trying to act like Daemon cheating and Daemon murdering someone who had literally was about to be murdered by the king. Come on, dude. You think you just get your tongue cut off? No. You probably would jerk around, slip, and just like what happened to another character in Song of Ice and Fire, they accidentally get their throat cut in the process, right? It happened to one of Maegor's wives. So let's see. Continuing on. Daemon executes Vaemon Velaryon by cutting his head in half in the middle of everyone in the throne room. This one really pissed me off. It struck me as a misunderstanding of the source material. Okay. Yeah, it's a fantasy world, but they have rules and laws and proper etiquette. And yes, Daemon is an asshole, but he should have faced some kind of repercussions for doing this without permission in front of everyone. No, you're wrong there, because the king was about to do it. The king was about to take his tongue, and it probably, like, okay, you can't say the king taking his tongue was like automatic sentence of death, but in canon, Daemon kills Vaemon Velaryon and feeds his carcass to Syrax. That hints at the fact that Daemon could behead him in front of everyone. Daemon literally kills him for doing the same thing, right? So the king does this. The king takes out 5 of the Velaryon cousins after Vaemon is killed. He takes out 5 members of House Velaryon's tongues out, and they're known as the Silent Five from that point forward. So they just sort of hodgepodge, mixed and match. Like, Vaemon was in the show going to become one of the Silent Five, or the only one silent, but Daemon took it a step further. He ultimately had to die around that time. He's calling Rhaenyra out. Like, I was actually surprised he wasn't killed faster. The Kingsguardmen should have clapped him and changed. Somebody should have knocked him out. Like, something should have happened, and he lost his head, so that actually makes sense. So, once again, you need to take your own advice. You say, it struck me as a misunderstanding, you're not telling them that they need to re-understand the source material, but I'm going to tell you, you're misunderstanding the source material. It is a lot darker and way more of an extreme world than at times what's depicted on screen in Game of Thrones and in House of the Dragon. Edit, a couple comments don't like me, including this one, but I disagree. You can't just get your head chopped in half in the throne room in front of the king without him ordering it. And I don't interpret him saying, I'll have your... So I'm going to just read your last point, and then I'm going to get the hell out of here, because you have either only read A Song of Ice and Fire once, or checking the wiki pages, reading a bunch, and thinking you've read the books, or you literally haven't read the books and you just are on the A Song of Ice and Fire Reddit so much you feel like you have read the books because you've perused theories. You keep saying that, but it's like the points you're making are nonsense. Do you know what some events that have happened in front of in the throne room without the king's permission? Like, get the fuck out of that's nuts. You're picking and choosing. All right, so going on to your last point, and I'm gonna get the hell out of here because you are not. Well, you're not on my level, but you're not on a level enough to make a post like this. And I think the 1,000 comments that I'm not going to read, there were probably several people that made several points that I did calling you out because it seems like you had to go back and edit this. So episode 9. I don't think I need to recap this one. Rainey's kills of dozens, and I don't need to really mention this because I kind of agree that that scene came out of nowhere, but ultimately it sets up the storming of the Dragon Pit, which is the most traumatic event in the entirety of the series next to things like Blood and Cheese, Rainier getting fed to Cyrax. It's not really heartbreaking, but the way that Aegon the Two dies is kind of just like, you know, a sad too. So like Rainey's, the way she dies with melees and a glad crack of the whip, like the storming of the Dragon Pit has to be set up early on, and that's kind of what they did. But I also didn't like it that much. The logic, the consistency in the logic doesn't make sense neither, because why would Rainey's kill all those thousands of innocent people when what we get from her character in the books is someone who would never do that, right? Like, we don't have a lot from Rainey's character, but we ultimately know that she willingly sacrifices herself for a cause that she either may not agree with or may be doomed. She willingly does that. So someone doing that righteous self-sacrifice, like obviously all these characters are great, they're, you know, they're not black or white, they're gray, right? But ultimately, when you hear that she does a self-sacrifice at the end, like Daemon does, and just a few others, that ultimately, my opinion, adds to the fact that, you know, she wouldn't do something like that. But then also, just to juxtapose that, Corlys is afraid to bring out his bastards because he's afraid of her wrath. So, potentially, there's something to that. Maybe she's, you know, a bit more like the dragon than we're given privy to in the history books of World of Ice and Fire and Blood Part 1. And then we'll go to the other post, because that was kind of a waste of time. All right, so let's see. This one's fun. This one's just straight up fun. This is from 7 years ago. It's from a user named Shroom_Soul. And they said, a red comet, Lovecraft theory, spoilers, a clash of kings, or a cock. Original got taken down for bad spoiler warning, so let's try again. And that's one thing you'll notice with a lot of the subreddits, the Song of Ice and Fire ones, or the House of the Dragon one. House of the Dragon one is terrible. It is like, it's, okay, to be fair, it's not terrible, but it's like Jerry Springer at times. Some of the posts that are allowed to be posted on the House of the Dragon subreddit are fucking insane. They're meaningless. There's no reason for anyone to post something like that, other than to make everybody argue in the comments. So that's what I mean when I say that. But the Game of Thrones subreddit, the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit, I just commenting on that spoiler warning thing. They're pretty hardcore for the most part about not bracketing the title for the types of posts you're doing. So if you do post on one of these things, be careful, because they will probably make it disappear or whatever. But anyway, people seem quite happy with the idea that the red comet of A Clash of Kings was nothing more than a comet. I like this idea too. It fits thematically. I love the idea of all these characters in different parts of Westeros and even Essos interpreting the comet in different ways. And then it's disappearing, hinting that it was nothing. But something's been gnawing at me for a while. We know George R. R. Martin likes his Lovecraft references, what with the Deep Ones, the Old Ones, the Blackstones, and several cosmic god creatures. One obscure outer god from the Cthulhu mythos is Groth, described as a large, rust-colored red sphere which drifts through space singing the music of the spheres. Holy crap, I gotta read some Lovecraft. When it passes by a planet, any great old ones or outer gods on the planet are awakened. This is why I wanted to include this. Typically causing all kinds of eldritch shenanigans. And what happens in A Clash of Kings under the Red Comet? We have the awakening of the dragons, the others becoming more aggressive, and apparently Thoros being resurrected for the first time by Beric, using the power of R'hllor. What I'm saying is, dragons, others, and R'hllor were all awakened in some way during this time. While I know most people won't like this theory, I believe it is possible that the Red Comet is the Song of Ice and Fire's universe equivalent of Groth, who had passed by Planetos and thus awakened multiple gods and ancient creatures. I'm surprised nobody has mentioned a connection to Groth before, but I'm pleased to be the first. Who knows? Maybe I'm right. So I don't actually know anything about Groth or any of the Lovecraftian mythos or any of that stuff. I've heard about the Deep Ones. I watched a YouTube video on it by someone who does like audiobooks. And I kind of got into it then, but then I just sort of fell off. So I don't really know anything about that stuff. But I do know a bit about Eldritch magic, right? So the word Eldritch means something that's been around since before the history of time. So in this game that I was playing for a couple of months, but then ultimately stopped because it was just too time consuming, called New World, there was this area on the map where they would have these Eldritch turkeys and these Eldritch this and that. And I looked it up, and Eldritch means just like ancient, forgotten forms of magic, kind of. So that's what that means. But I actually liked it a lot because that's true. That's so true. To be fair, White Walkers were active before Daenerys' dragons come back. They're active in the prologue. And then also, Thoros may have resurrected Beric for the first time during that time period where the Red Comet's passing over, but he learned the Kiss of Life from the priests of R'hllor, right? In, I believe, Volantis, right? I think that's where the largest Red Priest Temple is of R'hllor, but they're all over Essos. So ultimately, he learned from a Red Temple on Myr how to do the Kiss of Life. So this is something that has existed before, just as to kind of make points against that. I'll say this. I'll say what Asha says in the books, The Wildling. That comet means one thing, boy. Dragons. So the comet couldn't have necessarily heralded in the birth of all these things. I think what happens is this world, the world that A Song of Ice and Fire is set in, works in ebbs and flows. And when one thing recedes, another thing takes over, right? So when all the dragons died, that was the one link to the fire god, which was the one link to this other magic source, which enhanced these and whatever, right? So once the dragons went out, ultimately after the events that we're going to see on screen in House of the Dragon, that's when the magic died. And then when they come back, when Daenerys makes the ceremony the correct way, so like when Daenerys is doing this blood magic ritual, she doesn't even really know what she's doing. She's kind of letting her subconscious guide her. She knows that she's supposed to place the eggs around Khal Drogo and put these scented oils and stuff. Like she's doing this ritual that she's letting her body or her subconscious mind sort of guide her into doing. But ultimately, she does it correctly. She does the sacrifices correctly. Like, she does a blood sacrifice for Mirri Maz Duur, yes. But ultimately, she kills Khal Drogo. And Khal Drogo's sacrifice, along with their son Rhaego and Mirri Maz Duur, are the 3 blood sacrifices that are enough to bring back her dragons. Now, here's the thing. Drogon is very special. So we can directly say that Drogon's sacrifice and the way... Drogon's birth was directly related to Drogo's sacrifice. So Drogo's soul potentially could be in Drogon, right? But that's why that was successful. So ultimately, Drogon is the one that Daenerys rides. That's the one she bonded with. But then if you look at the other options of who was sacrificed during this time to bring about the other dragons, right? So Rhaego, Daenerys' baby, is probably responsible for bringing Rhaegal into the world. So whoever rides Rhaegal is probably going to be directly related to Daenerys through blood, right? Probably Jon Snow. And then you have the other dragon, Viserion. Viserion, the sacrifice that brings Viserion back into the world, is Mirri Maz Duur. Mirri Maz Duur is not someone who loved Daenerys at all. Daenerys may have thought that she loved her, but ultimately she saved her from rape, and Mirri Maz Duur never got over that. She's like, Mirri Maz Duur's reaction to Daenerys when Daenerys says, but I saved you from being raped by the Khalasar. She's like, you think that was the first time that it happened? You think that was going to, you think you stopped them from happening, kind of thing? So ultimately, Viserion may be mounted by someone and used against her, right? Because the sacrifice that brought him back into the world means ultimately he's not as close as the other dragons. Now, that's not necessarily the case, but as they age, as dragons grow wild, it doesn't matter if you're their mother or not. It doesn't matter. Like we see, Vhagar was written by Aemon for 10 years and still didn't listen to him. That's not the best example, but ultimately, this theory was really fun. Shout out to Shroom Soul. Let's see if you've got any more fun A Song of Ice and Fire theories that you've done. Wait, what is this? What did I click on? Oh, these are just his posts. So the newest one is from 5 years ago, so I don't think he's posted anything. Let's see how many people we got watching. All right, cool. Let me jump in the chat here. Shout out to everybody who is watching right now. Everybody who's slapped like on this as well, too. Thank you so much for that. I was going to give a shout out to everybody typing right now, so let's do that. Let me go up to the top. All right, so shout out to Adrian, Burchell, Amy Pfeiffer, Pebbles83, Billy Bob Robertson, Brian Osad Dewick, Mixed Queen, Destiny Phillips 420, Stormborn Wolf, Wex is a Secret Targaryen, Chan the Man, Adrian Burchell, Dogs Eat Birds. That's funny. Yes, they do. Linda Dawkins, Divine Sharika, Danny Dino, Reflective Rambling, hey Cass. She's the person who created this emblem that you can see right beside me right here. So let me do this. I thought I had it pulled up already. This right here. This is really cool. This is obviously your boy, Sir Hunts, and it was made by Cass, and it is my official logo. Thank you for making this. Looks amazing. I'm sure you put a lot of time and energy into it. But if you see this in my videos, yesterday I did a first episode of the Elf Friend podcast, my Lord of the Rings thing. This was the equalizer in the center of it, so I made a audio spectrum, made it circle around this logo. This will probably be, usually I use the one that I've made when I first started YouTube, and I'll, like, when I'm not in that I've made when I first started YouTube, and when I'm not in the video and it's an audio version, I'll put that up and have it zoom out or go in. But now I'm going to use this. This looks way better, and it actually looks like me. So that's cool. Thank you for making this, Cass. I really do appreciate it. I know we have, if you want this design for yourself, I actually have it available on my Teespring store. Let me see. Oh, one has already been bought. I've sold one so far to Dennis Sorensen. So, Dennis, if you're in the chat right now, thank you for getting that, my man. And then also shout out to Fantasy Bucket Knight, Crystal Hargens 50, Michael Lewis, Claudia Harras, Supernova, John Rod, Dennis Sorensen. What's up, my brother? Keep it a buck 50, Tyler Spawn. And I think that's it. All right, cool. So, if I didn't call your name, I'm sorry. I'll do another shout out towards the end. There was a question that I just saw that I wanted to answer. I don't remember the username, but I remember the question. The person said, Sir Hunts, what happened to Maegor the Cruel? So Maegor the Cruel, hang on, let me do this. Maegor the Cruel was literally just pretty much found. Let me make the chat bigger and put it. I guess I can put it up here. I don't want to block my Damon painting. Y'all see that? My boy Damon. My boy Damon. That's by J Fox Art on Instagram. Go follow the man. He is extremely talented. Right? Okay. So what? The person said, "What happened to Maegor the Cruel?" So Maegor the Cruel is raising an army. He's about to fight Jaehaerys and Vermithor. And ultimately, he dies. The night before the battle happens, he dies. There were 2 Kingsguard that were posted on his door. Some people think that they killed him. So basically, what happens is Maegor's body's found with several jagged pieces of the Iron Throne forced. One of them is forced through his neck. Some of them are forced through his wrist. Ultimately, one of his wives could have pushed him down. Rhaella, Jaehaerys' sister, could have potentially killed him before she escaped King's Landing with her dragon, right? It's a mystery. But ultimately, Maegor is dead. He could have committed suicide. He could have suicided himself. He could have sat on the Iron Throne after twisting pieces of the Iron Throne itself. Like, he could twist them up. People are always getting cut on the Iron Throne. Usually when you get cut on the Iron Throne, it means that you're being rejected by it. Canonically, when Rhaenyra's cut, people are like, oh shit, the Iron Throne spurned her, she needs to get off of it. Same thing with Viserys, same thing with the Mad King. The Mad King was actually cut so many times, he was called King Scab. It's just hilarious. So the Iron Throne rejected the shit out of him. In short, Maegor's found like that, with pieces of the Iron Throne pushed through him. So, did he kill himself? It's possible. He could easily twist those pieces of metal out and then literally just sit on the Iron Throne and lean back And when he leaned back, that's what killed him. Ultimately, when Tiana of the Tower dies, that's his black bride. Maegor has several black brides, but when Tiana of the Tower dies, she admits to, via confession, that she poisoned all of Maegor's wives, and none of them would ever carry their child all the way for Maegor to have heirs. So, at a young age, Maegor is given steroids, this is my personal theory, steroids in the form of blood magic that increased his strength and vigor and ultimately may have made him infertile, right? So, the steroids, he's given a sword at 4 and cuts a cat in half. And then at 12, he's destroying people in melees and tourneys and in jousting, people that are twice his age and bigger than him even, right? So it's nuts, right? So ultimately, Maegor, is given Blackfire by Aegon the Conqueror, ends up claiming Aegon the Conqueror's Mount Balerion on the Black Dread, but ultimately Aenys sends him away because he tries to marry another woman, and Aenys never names Maegor his heir, so when Aenys dies because he's got a bad belly, and then Visenya goes and crowns Maegor. Ultimately, Maegor is known as the Cruel. He does several things. His legacy is ultimately tarnished by his enemies after the fact. He's not as cruel as it seems. Nobody is exactly like how history remembers them in A Song of Ice and Fire, regardless whether it's the TV show or the books, right? So, you could always make counterpoints for anything, really. But ultimately, that's how he dies. And I saw that, and I don't even remember which person had left that question, so I apologize if they were not really serious about how Maegor died. All right, so let's see. Hang on, I just wanted to check something real quick, because I had another post that I was going to pull up, but then I decided not to. Let me try to bring it up. All right, well, I can't find it. So let's just do this. I got 2 comments from my patron. Nancy Loera says, LOL, I didn't hate it. The beat is good. The song that I recorded last night, like an idiot. Here's the one for Theon. I don't know if I could play it, though, because the beat, this thing is probably already demonetized anyway. Play a portion of it. I could just rap the lyrics. All right, so let's see. Do I have? All right. Let me just do it like a cappella, I guess. I could do Daenerys first. So obviously, I didn't think of this originally. The Tyrion rap that Alt Shift X does, I've always thought was really good. I've also always thought that if I could get the lyrics to that and rap it myself in my rap voice, I could make it sound even better than he does. But instead, I just wrote my own lyrics, right? So let's see. I did one for Daenerys. I did one for Theon. I did a couple more. I probably won't release them on anywhere but in my Instagram stories or something. I don't want to release them on Patreon because I know that every single member of my Patreon gets an alert when I post, and if it's for some fuck ass song that I just was joking around with, I don't think they would necessarily be. All right, so anyway, Daenerys. So this will be hard without a beat. Maybe I could play the beat through my headphones, and then it's obviously not technically playing on the stream, so I should. All right. Let me just make sure. Nagatomo. Alright, so yeah. You can wait, let me play the beat first. Alright. Let's do lo-fi type beat. It doesn't matter what. Okay, so if you go to the Lo-Fi Girl studying, the lo-fi hip hop, whatever song is playing right now is the one I'm gonna rap this to. This might be too hard. This is like too slow. Diane, you can call me Diane Greyjoy. I'm a pirate. Wait, no, this is not gonna work. I wrote this for that one beat, so I gotta find something different. Hold on. All right. Let me see. Let's do it for a different one. Something more upbeat, maybe. Like faster beats per minute. Okay, drop the beat. Jesus Christ. That was the drop? You can call me Theon Greyjoy. You can call me Theon Greyjoy. I'm a pirate, no wait, a prisoner of my mind, contemplating suicide. If I die, I don't care. Will you see my past and my present? Now it's true. Please leave me alone and let me eat this rat in peace. I swear I won't even leave a tail or a piece. A prisoner, I didn't mean or care. I just wanted some ass and now I'm fingerless with white hair. She's so corny, dude. I know my appearance may make you uncomfortable, but please, we just alone in here like Rudy Huxtable. Oh, wait, no, wait, that was the wrong universe. Let me go back in time. I promise I didn't kill them boys. Nah, that was someone else. Dude smelled so bad, I thought he was someone else. This pain be great sometimes. I want to let it go, but everyone just looks at me, and the pain inside they will never know. I paid the iron price for this, and this is what I reap. Gotta practice moving my fingers, cause they ain't a part of me. I was stolen as a child and fed to a wolf. If you don't listen to my truth, then you'll never know the truth. One time, I hit you in the brain. I am Theon Greyjoy, and they call me insane. I got white hair with no fingers. I got white hair with no fingers. That shit is so corny. All right, so then the next one, the Daenerys one, I'll do this same song. Just let me restart it real quick. Daenerys. Born during a storm. All right. Born during a storm, I was destined to die. Dragons once ruled the realm, bringing fears from the skies. Everyone I meet fucking calls me a child, but fuck that, I'm flying on Balerion, come again in this wild. Fire will rain, bringing down blood on my enemies. Then some pain. Will I be the Mad Queen? I conquer where I go, liberating all my children, freeing the slaves, eliminated people, true evil. Slavers Bay, not Bay of Dragons, they will say. Nay, like my silver mare, flowing hair, washing the ill and sick, although never catching it. Queen Marine, no queen of the world. One day you'll see dragons come again, truly. All right, that's that. So Danny Dino, the only reason why I did that is because you're a member of my Patreon. That's extremely embarrassing. I would have rather just played shitty guitar for like 10 minutes. But yeah, some of the lines are sick. I know because I used to be a rapper. I know some of those lines are sick. Probably lost all of the people that were watching me live. Let's see how many people. Yeah, that was silly. All right, well, this is a good point to wrap this video up. I wanted to do, obviously I wanted to do George's notes thing, but I actually had someone message me on Instagram that I just saw today. Someone named Seth Thornton, I think. Please send me another message on with the pictures, right? So this person said they watched me. I don't recognize the username, but they went to the Texas A&M University. So that's going to be a video. Like, I know it's kind of misadvertisement for the thumbnail, but not really, because we talked about when's a winner and everything else, and I've talked about Georgia's notes and all that stuff. But ultimately, when I do the Texas A&M Cushing Library thing, I want to have pictures ready to go, not just a Reddit post that I kind of have to sort through. Because also, if I can read it beforehand, and I didn't really do all too much of that the last stream, if I can read it beforehand, I can formulate my thoughts better and use my knowledge base or whatever to, make predictions based on that. But that'll be a video. Look for that. Thank you to everybody who's watching me. We had like 30 people consistently watching the whole time. That's amazing. Thank you for doing that. I'll probably take a week off from live streaming, maybe a few days. Like when I say a few days, maybe it won't be a whole week before I live stream again, but it might be a week between now and the next one. I've been uploading like crazy here on YouTube, but I've been uploading even more on my Patreon. So if you enjoyed this and you want to kick me like, $2, you can join my Patreon and you'll have access to content not only the content that's there right now, but also all the content that is going to be uploaded. I finished a bunch of videos last night. I'm working on the final touches for my season outline, part 2, where I cover episodes 4, 5, and 6 for House of the Dragon. That was something that I was really excited about making, and I think a lot of people that watched it enjoyed it on my Patreon. So be looking out for that. But thank you for watching here on YouTube, because like I just said, I've uploaded a bunch here on YouTube too. I think like 9 videos in the past 10 days or something, which is crazy, right? So please check all those out. I'm covering Lord of the Rings, Dune, A Song of Ice and Fire, House of the Dragon, Fire and Blood. To be fair, Song of Ice and Fire, House of the Dragon, Fire and Blood, Game of Thrones, that's all under the same umbrella. But Dune and Lord of the Rings are certainly not. And yeah, I make content on those. So if you like those, you can join my Patreon. There's a few episodes of a Dune podcast. I've recorded something for Lord of the Rings, but I don't know if I should release it on my Patreon or if I should release it here on YouTube. It's just episode 2 of the Elf Friends podcast. But yeah, all that. Look forward to it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. A long night until 3 us boozed.